Okay, hello and welcome. Today's video is going to be something a little different. I'm going to call it Turning 40, the Future, plus Other Nonsense. At the time of recording this video, I'm currently only days away from my 40th birthday, or at least I was back when I first started piecing together the script for this now long gestating video. The truth is, I've been contemplating making a video like this for what frustratingly feels like forever by this stage. The purpose of which, for whom, or exactly why, I guess remains to be seen at this stage. Regardless, let's get into it. For the sake of full transparency, I'd be hiding the truth if I didn't say that I've been struggling with a bit of a personal slump in recent months, or perhaps, the more I think about it, maybe even a few years. Therefore, preparing for this video has actually come about in stages, or waves. Actually, if I really cast my mind back, I remember clearly first wrestling with the essence of this topic back when I was around 27. So it's fair to say that traces of this subject go quite a while back. Anyway, back to the focus of more recent times. Whenever I've been experiencing any particularly low periods, I'd sometimes feel motivated to write about this topic, thinking that I might do something with it one day, such as I am now. I'd begin by making mental script notes, later writing some of these thoughts into my phone, then finally piecing it all together in script form, which is where we finally find ourselves today. At various stages throughout this process, however, if I'd start to balance out somewhat and begin to feel a little more normal again, which could be days, weeks, or even months apart, I begin to feel more vulnerable and walled up, soon reminding myself that the whole idea of opening up and putting something like this out in public is not just a stupid idea, but something that potentially might only come across as seemingly needy or desperate. And for anybody who knows me personally, I am without doubt a very private person, so sharing much of anything private or personal is already highly unusual for me to do. Because of this, I'd pause the whole idea again and again until I would inevitably stumble back into my next bout of negatively charged inspiration, so to speak. Therefore, because of this back and forth of ups and downs, it's been a much more challenging task than I initially anticipated, for a multitude of reasons. Consequently, and ironically it seems, I suppose that both the purpose of this topic and the reason for its subsequent delay exists entirely within the mere idea of even contemplating the desire to put this video out altogether. It's really all just one big, complicated mental hurdle. A snake eating its own tail kind of nonsense. So, if you feel like sticking around, I'll do my best to clarify further just what it is exactly that I'm even trying to talk about today. In short, I wanted to share my opinions, observations, as well as any associated challenges and obstacles that I've experienced around entering my 40th year of life. Or at least, my specific personal example of where my life currently is at, all whilst belly flopping into this new decade of existence. And as a run-of-the-mill, average Australian guy, married with kids, a house, with future life and pending career changes hovering about on the foreseeable horizon, I also acknowledge that my situation is hardly unique. I have no doubt that I am but one of many around my age, contemplating many of life's decisions. This, however, is my story. Regardless, it's this reason that I thought that it might be worth even trying to discuss this plight of mine. And I'm very aware of the risk of how utterly hopeless it may come across as here, as well as the potentially crippling embarrassment that very likely may follow. All of that said, I kind of feel as though I've got nothing to lose at this point. So my thinking is just to throw this out into the wild and hope that some good comes from it. But don't get me wrong, for as much as this is for my own selfish needs, I also hope that it somehow potentially could be of assistance to anybody else who might be going through a similar situation to my own. So to clarify, this is less about seeking any sympathy, and more of a genuine attempt to seek some advice from anybody who might have some insight or wisdom to share. So, as mentioned, I've recently turned 40. This in itself isn't necessarily a problem. But it's my complete lack of any personal, professional, or critical development that I feel that I've managed to avoid almost entirely within those 4 decades of existing on this great big planet. It's true, I'm married, with a number of beautiful kids. So I want to make it perfectly clear that I very much am grateful for my family, marriage, and for the most part, health that I've so kindly been graced with. Any of the following remarks are in no way to diminish those areas of my life. So then, what is it that I'm even complaining about? I'll begin with career, or more accurately, an absence of one. For sure, I've worked full-time, non-stop since turning 18, for which of those counting is now 22 years ago. In fact, my most recent job, I've actually been employed for around 12 years now. And whilst the type of job isn't important to mention, the fact remains that it isn't, nor was it ever intended, to be a career. Absolutely, it can be for many people out in the world, but it's simply not for me. That's not to say that I'm not grateful for the opportunities that it's rewarded me with throughout the years, such as a home, some cool stuff, as well as the ability to feed and look after my family each day. So, whilst this probably isn't so different from many other workers out there in the world, here is why I'm more recently really beginning to be troubled by this matter. It's no secret that the economy has been struggling in recent years, and we could insert 1,000 reasons for why that might be. But the fact remains that many businesses have been hit hard. My current place of work is no exception. So the very real risk that my job may not even exist in the near future isn't at all implausible. Add to that, as well as being a possible symptom of said economy, is the rising crime and the reduction in quality of life here in Australia, Victoria specifically, where I'm from. For some, they might be quick to dismiss it, perhaps only because it hasn't affected them yet, but truthfully, it's really something that's beginning to wear me down. Though I'm lucky enough to not have personally been a victim of this recent wave of crime, yet at least, well, not since the place that I was renting about 15 years ago was broken into and ransacked. That takes its toll and leaves an ever-present sense of paranoia occupying my mind, believe me. That aside, to talk about today, 2025, the escalating crime that seems to be a daily occurrence now. We're not just talking about petty crime either. Home invasions, car thefts, businesses being firebombed, etc. Overall, things are unfortunately looking a bit miserable of late. Not to mention the ever-increasing graffiti adorning everything from house fences, street signs, even vehicles. And not forgetting the vandalism that appears on every street corner, such as the shattered windows of bus stops, uprooted street signs, and even the theft of plants and trees from people's very own front yards. To some, this might seem petty, and though we may not be at South African levels of societal collapse just yet, it's a contest that I'd rather not feel as though we're eagerly competing in. And it truly is a shame. Despite Australia's natural inherent beauty, there's enough bad eggs out there doing what they can to ruin it for everybody else. And I'm of no illusion that this isn't happening in other parts of the world, but that's not to say that we should just be rolling over and accepting it either. And when you've got a government that doesn't appear to want to do much to combat these problems, let alone hardly recognise that they even exist, it really makes it hard to be inspired and feel as though good opportunities are just around the corner. So to contrast all of this with a country like Japan, for instance, which I know has become a bit of a cliche these days, despite admittedly having its own share of problems, the simple fact remains that general goodness and inspiration around my homeland just feels more than a bit absent of late. At least, that's how my head has been interpreting it. Anyway, I mentioned Japan earlier, for which I'm fortunate to say that my wonderful lady wife actually hails from. This being the case, having had first-hand experience with said land, its culture and its people, I can absolutely say that it presents a very attractive place to want to be. There's so much about it that I gravitate to, so many emotional and physical behaviours that just feel so natural to me. I can't help but be fascinated by its astonishing beauty, a clear respect for its culture, community conventions, and associated societal rules, including the near-on complete absence of any theft, graffiti, vandalism, etc. I could go on, but I remarked how I felt such a natural sense of being at home over there, perhaps even more than I do in my own country of birth right now. I felt a state of belonging, it just felt right. Now, for as much as that is very exciting and inspiring from one point of view, it's also incredibly sad that I feel that my patience and overall existence is being driven away from the country that I've grown up and lived my entire life in so far. So much so, in fact, for anybody that knows me well, I've made no secret about the very real consideration that my family has been contemplating moving over there to live in the foreseeable future. While this all might feel like some kind of unrelated tangent that I've just derailed on, or rant if you will, I assure you that it's all related to my earlier topic, so to get back on that track. Any big move, be it location and or occupation, would no doubt present certain challenges for even the most prepared. It's made all the more difficult when you try to imagine doing so with a complete reset, or more correctly, when I inevitably decide or am forced to make a career change, whether it be here in Australia or in another country. I wouldn't have any notable career skills or qualifications to transfer with. And if we were to move to Japan, language, though I am slowly learning, would no doubt be yet another obstacle for me to work around. But that last bit can be overcome with a bit of discipline and a bit more effort on my part, so I won't dwell on that too much. So while the latter description may be a more extreme example of trying to start a new job or career, it remains true that even if I were to stay in Australia, seeking a new form of income in the not too distant future is very likely something that I'm going to have to navigate regardless. But just quit your complaining and do something, anything, you say. Of course, if push comes to shove, I would never leave my family without. If I was absolutely desperate, I would take up any old job if required. However, given the choice, as well as take into consideration associated body pains and whatever else that have come from having worked physical and often repetitive jobs my entire life, call me selfish or greedy, but I'd really like to feel professionally fulfilled for the first time in my life. And that's no exaggeration. I genuinely have never felt as empty, directionless, and as lost as I do now. Well then, what interests or hobbies do I have that might be suitable or potentially viable for such a career change? Well, I'll continue with why I'm having such a hard time working this one out. Recent months, if not years, of research and soul searching has led me no closer to discovering just what that next chapter of work could be. And it's not due to a lack of trying. One big and frustrating personal struggle of recent time especially has been an almost complete lack of finding joy or interest in pretty much anything that I try to involve myself with. This also extends into hobbies and other interests. Things that I know I would normally be entertained or pacified by. Almost anything I do lately just feels like a chore. As for hobbies or other interests, should I get as far as actually attempting to do so, if it's not entirely a chore to partake in, it merely feels like I'm just passing time and less like good quality time being enjoyed or appreciated. I've been irritable, short-tempered, and overall just not enjoying each day as I should. And it has to be said that this really sucks. It sucks that I feel this way to begin with, but it sucks that others around me are probably no stranger to this observation. It already sucks to be wrestling with this likely perceivably immature problem, but it sucks even more when you literally have no idea of how to dig yourself out of such a rut. It can be so easy to just turn my brain off and kill a few hours in front of the TV, rather than actually doing something constructive or educational. Text messages even might sometimes go days before being read or replied to, feeling as though it's some great task that I have to apply myself to in order to get it done. And I get it, this is totally a first world problem, for sure, but it doesn't mean that it's not real. I'm old enough to recognise that I have no choice but to overcome whatever this is and to just make it work, but I also feel as though I'm still just young enough and hopefully capable enough that I don't quite yet have to resign myself to living out my days in just any dead-end job and merely just existing through life. To be clear, I don't believe that the universe owes me anything, nor do I have any delusion of being famous or exceptionally rich, but I do want to feel as I'm living life and not just existing through it. We only get one chance at this, so please forgive me if I desire to want to make a little more from it than I currently seem to have done, and I'll touch more on this in a second. To sidestep quickly, even as I'm recording this video right now, I'm still in two minds about the whole thing. I've been back and forth so many times on how or even if I would make this video. Whether it's because I'm actually desperate enough to hope that some good comes from it, or whether I'm just jaded enough with my meagre existence that maybe I just don't care about the potential consequences anymore. I honestly don't know. At the very least, the compromise was that instead of filming myself on video, which I most certainly don't have the confidence for at this stage, I decided to just narrate over whatever the visuals are that you're currently seeing on your screen. In any case, I'll continue. So if I may, please allow me to share a little background on perhaps why I'm at where I am today. Throughout my whole life, as far as I perceive it anyway, I seem to have had this knack of never completely being able to commit to really making something of myself. Whether that's due to being lazy, afraid, or possibly just outright incompetence, I honestly can't say. And that, I think, is the root of this whole frustration. Even when I completed high school all those years ago, while everybody else was off applying to universities, other forms of further education, or even real jobs, I didn't apply for a single thing. And back then, it's not because I didn't have any ideas or interests. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Between different art subjects, music, and other creative interests, I arguably had too many options in my mind to just pick one. Therefore, in my backwards 17-year-old head, my fear was that if I applied and actually got into a particular line of education or work, I could potentially become trapped in that bubble forever in whatever that line of work might be. So instead, choosing a lifetime of neither option happened to make sense to me at the time, or at the very least, that is how things have turned out thus far and why I'm at where I am today. However, I'm not a complete train wreck. If I were to give myself any credit whatsoever, I'd like to be brave enough to want to believe that I might actually be reasonably good at some things. As mentioned just a moment ago, I like to consider myself as being more of a creative type. Music was always a big love for me during my younger years, and whilst accepting that my days of becoming a rock star may be over, the dream isn't entirely extinguished. I will never not have music in my life. Visual arts have also been a big part of my life. In recent years even, I had, or technically still have, a side business where I was drawing pet portraits. Sadly though, once I started to put my prices up to a point where it made the exercise even remotely financially worthwhile, the orders stopped coming in. Also since then, for reasons that I can't quite pinpoint at the moment, I haven't drawn anything for a couple of years now, whether for business or pleasure. Any desire to do so has just completely dried up for the time being. In addition to this, and even currently, I've been operating a small photography business in my spare time throughout the last few years. Admittedly though, throughout the last few months, perhaps due to my current headspace, I've stepped back a little bit, as I've been focused on trying to work out everything going on in my mind that I've been sharing with you in this video. Consequently, the last however many months have seen me achieve practically no progress on either front. I wouldn't call this intentional self-sabotage, but this is unfortunately just how things have been lately. When I do commit myself to something, I'm either all in or nothing. Certainly when it comes to hobbies, it goes through phases. I will be obsessed and completely absorbed by it, and once that momentum runs out for whatever reason, it then becomes a chore. It could be months or sometimes even years before I get the hankering to pick that thing up once again. I totally envy anybody who can successfully divide their focus amongst multiple interests. But it's something that I've always struggled with. My wife sometimes jokes, or perhaps she's not actually joking, that I could even have ADHD, or that I might be autistic, which may or may not be true. I've never been tested. Regardless of that, I don't see how that helps my case. It's because of this assortment of aforementioned reasons that I actually decided to create this YouTube channel. As per my channel's name, whilst admittedly a clumsy pun, was created with the intention of hopefully providing positive or interesting content, both for myself as well as anybody else who might be interested in my ramblings or whatever it was that I happened to be recording that day. Now that I think about it, my channel, as sparsely populated as it is at this time of posting this, isn't unlike my headspace. It's a collection of random interests and musings. My ultimate hope, though, was that it would eventually begin to gravitate towards a particular direction. So far, I haven't really added enough content for that vision to become clear just yet, but I will try to make an effort to update it more regularly, even if that means making a few more of these rambling diary entries, or perhaps more correctly, mental purges. What's funny actually, as I think about it, as I'm currently writing the script for this video, this is probably the most focused that I've been in any recent memory. I dare say that I'm almost even enjoying the exercise of writing, and apparently now narrating, as I'm recording this video. There's every chance though that nobody at all will see this video, so then I'd question whether my time writing or making it was even worth it or not. Alternatively, it could be viewed 1,000 times or more, flooded with a whole heap of negative feedback, at which point I would probably become intimidated and judgmental of myself once again, consequently then deciding to delete the video altogether. And so, this is me, full circle. I don't know whether I'm coming or going. Who, what, where, when, why. I'm at a loss. I am lost. The hours that I've spent writing this script may have been a pointless exercise. It may never even be recorded. For better or worse, though, I will certainly try to get this recorded and posted. From there, we'll just have to wait and see where it goes. Again, I do hope that I do have the guts to share these scattered thoughts with whoever cares to listen. I hope that doing so somehow opens up my mind, and maybe even opportunities. Who knows? I hope that I can have the courage to keep this video up and available for myself to view down the track, reflect upon, and maybe even laugh at. Until then, we'll just have to wait and see. To touch back onto my future prospects, my ultimate goal would be to develop a career that somehow caters to my erratic interests. To be able to come and go, channeling through different interests as I please would be the perfect line of work. In this dream example, I'd be a photographer, a filmmaker, an artist, a musician, a writer, sculptor, whatever, all whilst living out my dream within Japan, exploring all of the amazing sights and sounds of the amazing land. Turning that desire into reality, however, that's where my problem lies. I've been spending a lot of time researching online jobs that could potentially facilitate that kind of lifestyle, but so far, nothing really clicks with me. I don't want to code or do programming. I don't have the skills for numbers or accounting. If given the choice, I'd rather not have to be an English teacher in a foreign country. I don't have the beauty or charm to be in front of a camera creating content for thirsty audiences. I don't hate writing, but as this script and subsequent video clearly demonstrates, I have a tendency to be overly wordy. My style is neither succinct nor concise, perfectly exemplified here by my redundant use of both succinct and concise. Due to this, something like copywriting or any other form of creative writing might not really be suited to me. This, right now, however, is what feels natural to me. This is largely how I normally talk, and evidently how I write, though I do prefer being able to edit myself in the written form. Often when I do talk, I have a tendency to trip over my own tongue, almost as if my brain and mouth aren't properly in sync. Even if I know what I want to say at the time, I can't always articulate it as well as I would like to in real time. Therefore, writing provides me with the time and space I need to properly collect and formulate my words. As such, writing feels like a much safer option, if it were one at all. So, with all of that said, I think that I've pretty much said everything that I really needed to get off my chest right now. Do I feel any better for having done it? Too early to tell just yet. I'll just have to wait and see. To summarise the whole thing, or the TLDR as the kids say, is that I'm nearly 40, professionally directionless, and personally lacking motivation. What path I'll take and what eventually drives me to follow it remains to be seen. And in case there's any doubt, I'm not looking for handouts or an easy ride either. I'm happy to work hard. I just don't know what direction or process that needs to be at this stage. Anyhow, if you've been kind enough to watch this all the way through, I sincerely thank you. If there is anything at all that you feel you could contribute to help guide me through this situational mental fog that I'm currently experiencing, I would be immensely grateful. At the very least, simply viewing this video adds minutes to my channel's watch time, bringing me closer to hopefully maybe even being eligible to make some pocket change from this online experiment one day. But that's currently quite a while away, so I'm certainly not banking on that as being any kind of solution to my current conundrum. So until next time then, which I hope will be at least ever so slightly more joyful than this video has been, thank you again for taking the time to hear me out and for watching. Goodbye for now.